Today, we're diving into two of the most chilling and jaw-dropping cave incidents you'll ever hear. In our first story, a young woman's fall leads to a terrifying and life-changing disaster. But just when you think it can't get any more insane, the second story takes things to an unimaginable level. As always, viewer discretion is strongly advised. January 18th, 1980. A freezing evening in Giles County, Virginia, when 18-year-old Laura Sherbak, her husband and friends, set out to explore New River Cave. Famous for winding passages and striking limestone walls, it was a favorite spot for casual cavers with no ropes needed. To them, it felt like the perfect place for a night below ground. New River Cave was also a wet system, where seeping water sculpted stunning limestone shapes. Beautiful as they looked, the same water cut razor-sharp ridges and points. Anyone climbing above such formations had to move with absolute care. The group reached the entrance around 7 p.m., hauling camping gear, eager to push deeper and camp inside. Excitement carried them as they moved into the dark, damp tunnels. At first, the trip felt routine, 2,000 feet of crawling, climbing, and squeezing through twisting corridors. But everything shifted when they reached a constricted spot called the Blowhole. The ground here was unstable, a mix of loose settlement and slick limestone carved by centuries of water. Damp patches clung to the surface, turning every step into a serious risk. Just beyond the Blowhole, the path narrowed sharply, forcing Laura Sherbak to inch upward with arms and legs braced against the walls. Only 18, eager yet inexperienced, she relied solely on balance and instinct to move through the dangerous climb. Then disaster struck. Her boots slipped on the wet, angled rock, and before she could react, her body dropped suddenly. Her arms thrashed in the darkness, clutching at empty air. Gravity yanked her downward, legs spreading wide in a frantic effort to stop the fall, but nothing could save her. A jagged limestone spike jutted from the cavern floor, sharp as a blade. Laura struck it hard, legs spread on impact. A sickening thud echoed, followed by a piercing scream that shattered the silence. The blow tore into her lower abdomen, sending waves of agony through her body. She collapsed forward, gasping, blood soaking her clothes. The pain was instant and crippling, like molten steel tearing through her core. Every heartbeat throbbed against the raw wound, and blood soaked quickly through her clothing. Her companions rushed in, their shadows twisting across the cavern walls. Pulling back her clothes revealed a nightmare. Torn vaginal tissue hung open from the impact, and pelvic fractures were likely. Laura's breaths came shallow and ragged, shock already gripping her body. Her limbs shook, her pulse fast but weak, fighting to keep her alive as blood poured out. The cave's icy air bit into her skin, worsening the shivers of her fading strength. Her companions knew time was critical. Two raced back through the cave's twisting tunnels to find help, while the others acted fast. They pulled off her wet clothes and slid her into a down sleeping bag, desperate to preserve her heat. But the agony was relentless. Every slight movement sent new shocks tearing through her abdomen. Her breathing turned ragged, her awareness fading as the cave's darkness blurred into the black edges of her vision. By 10 p.m., the Giles County Rescue Squad was alerted and mobilized. Yet a crushing problem arose. The two men who had climbed out for help were now disoriented, unable to retrace the path to Laura's location. The twisting tunnels of New River Cave became a merciless maze. Every passage mirrored the last, and in their panic, the route details blurred. Time was vanishing. Rescue crews, including expert cavers from the VPI Grotto, pushed forward slowly. They crawled through tight, unforgiving spaces, the weight of uncertainty crushing them. Had she already bled out? Had the cold finished with the fall began? Was she still conscious enough to answer? At last, they reached her. She was fading fast. Her breathing was faint, her body shutting down. Severe hypovolemic shock had set in, her blood loss overwhelming every desperate attempt to keep vital organs alive. Her skin was icy, slick with sweat, lips tinged blue. Hypothermia had set in. Combined with massive blood loss, the cave's cold was draining the last of her strength. Her body was collapsing piece by piece. Without urgent action, she would not survive. Medics inserted an IV, forcing fluids into her failing system. The wounds were sterilized and dressed, but every slight movement sent shocks of agony tearing through her body. She tried to cry out, but her voice broke, her body betraying her with weakness. Then came the hardest part, evacuation. She was secured into a Stokes litter, a stretcher built for harsh rescues. Crews lifted her through suffocating crawlways, over jagged climbs and down twisting rock channels, fighting to keep her still with every grueling step. Each jolt sent fire ripping through her abdomen, as if her body was being torn apart again and again. Her mind slipped in and out, vision clouded by shock and exhaustion. More than 25 rescuers worked in unison, pressing against the cave walls as they passed her like fragile glass. In one brutal section, they lay in a line, forming a human conveyor to slide her stretcher through the narrow rock. Every motion was torture. Her body convulsed with each shift, pain radiating through her mangled core. The rescuers fought to move her gently, but even the softest grip brought fresh waves of torment. By 5 a.m., 9 hours after the fall, Laura was carried from the cave and rushed into an ambulance. The ride blurred past in IV drips, flashing sirens, and fragments of urgent medical orders. She drifted in and out, her body barely clinging to life. At the hospital, a trauma team was waiting. As the stretcher burst through the doors, doctors swarmed, nurses stabilizing her fading vitals with swift precision. Her injuries were devastating. The fall had shredded tissue and caused massive internal damage, the blood loss dragging her body toward collapse. What haunted everyone most was how little it had taken. A short fall, a sharp edge, a life pushed to the brink. It was June 1997, and the mountains of northern Pakistan baked under a scorching sun. 33-year-old Nasir tightened his grip on the horse's reins as he cast one last look at the village he and his brother were abandoning for good. The Salah Khel tribe had torn itself apart. What began as a land dispute had spiraled into bloodshed, splitting families, filling the streets with violence, and leaving men dead on both sides. For Nasir, staying meant certain death. His chest ached as he thought of the family he was leaving behind, his wife and 2 young children. But if he stayed, he would either be killed or forced to kill, and their lives would be ruined no matter what. He and his brother Qadir knew these mountains better than anyone. Years spent exploring caves and glaciers had taught them every secret path smugglers and refugees used. That knowledge was their only weapon now. With nothing but what they could carry, the brothers rode into the night, heading for the remote Kohistan region where no one would dare follow. After hours on horseback, they finally reached the lonely Supat Valley. But this wasn't just any valley. Locals whispered about it, a place where ice never melted and where travelers sometimes vanished without a trace. As they neared a massive glacier, Nasir's horse snorted, uneasy. The glacier stretched before them like a frozen ocean, dazzling but deadly, its surface split with deep cracks and jagged scars. They needed shelter. The winds were growing harsher, and fatigue pressed heavily on them. Then Nasir spotted it, a dark opening carved into the glacier wall, a cave. Qadir held the horses while Nasir stepped closer. The entrance was wide enough for a man to walk through with ease. Inside, the walls shimmered with an eerie blue glow, the light of ice compressed over countless ages. Nasir moved in, and the temperature dropped sharply. His breath puffed white as he pushed deeper, scanning for a safe place to camp. The floor looked solid, thick, ancient ice that seemed to have stood for centuries. But glaciers are treacherous, and appearances can kill. He took one more step. Then the world shattered beneath him. The ice floor wasn't solid at all. It was a thin shell hiding a vast chasm deep within the glacier. The crack thundered through the cavern as the ground gave way. In an instant, Nasir plunged into darkness, tumbling past towering walls of ancient ice, through layers that had been forming since long before his time. The crevice was brutally narrow, just wide enough for a man's body to slip through, and it seemed endless. 20 feet down, 50, 100. Then, with bone-crushing force, Nasir's body slammed against a thin ledge deep inside the glacier. Everything went dark. Up above, Qadir heard the crash. Heart racing, he sprinted to the cave's mouth and stared into a hole that plunged straight into the earth, like a passage to hell. He shouted his brother's name again and again, but only his own echoes came back. Desperate, he ran for help. Within hours, villagers arrived carrying ropes and lanterns. Men lowered themselves into the crack as far as they dared, but the chasm was too deep, too narrow. The icy walls were slick and offered no hold. For 3 days they tried, but the glacier was alive, shifting, closing in. Fresh snow buried their tracks. The crevice was sealing itself like a wound, and just like that, Nazir was gone. But what happened next was beyond anyone's imagination. The instant his body struck that frozen ledge, the extreme cold took over. Temperatures far below freezing locked his body in ice almost instantly. Yet this was no ordinary freeze. The glacier itself had become a tomb and a perfect vault for preservation. There was no oxygen down in that crevice, no moisture, no bacteria that could cause decay. Instead of rotting, the cold sucked out all the water from his cells, preserving everything: his skin, his clothes, even his facial features. He became trapped in time. Years passed. Nasir's wife waited for news that never came. His 2 children grew up without their father. The family never stopped hoping he might return, but as the years turned into decades, hope faded. The glacier kept its secret. Every winter, new snow piled on top of the crevice. Every summer, some of it melted, but not enough to reveal what lay beneath. Nazir sank deeper and deeper into the ice. For 28 years, he lay there in perfect preservation, like an ancient Egyptian pharaoh in an ice tomb. But the world was changing above the glacier. Starting in the early 2000s, temperatures in northern Pakistan began rising. The change was gradual at first, but it accelerated year after year. The massive glaciers that had existed for millennia started melting faster than they ever had before. Each summer brought record heat. The ice that had taken thousands of years to build was vanishing in just a fraction of that time. By 2025, the glacier in Supat Valley had retreated so far it was almost unrecognizable. Areas once buried under tons of ancient ice now lay bare beneath the summer sun. The landscape looked nothing like the place Nasir had entered nearly 3 decades earlier. On August 1, 2025, a shepherd named Omar Khan was crossing what had once been the glacier's frozen heart. The melt had revealed ground that hadn't seen daylight since before he was born. Then he froze in his tracks. Something was jutting out of the ice, something that looked eerily human. It seemed impossible. Who could have ended up here in such a remote, unforgiving place? But as Omar stepped closer, his disbelief turned to shock. A man lay there, perfectly preserved. His skin, his face, even his hair were intact, as if he had only just fallen asleep. His clothes, though dated, showed almost no decay. This was no recent tragedy. The style of his garments belonged to another time, decades past. Kneeling beside the body, Omar searched for answers. And then he found it, an identity card tucked safely in the man's pocket. The name read, Nasir Uddin. The card was stamped from the 1990s, yet still perfectly legible, sealed in the glacier's icy vault for nearly 30 years. Word spread quickly through the isolated villages, and soon the police arrived to investigate what seemed impossible. A man missing for 28 years, lying before them as if he had died only yesterday. Local officer Amjad Hussain took charge of the case. When the identification was checked against old records, the truth came out. Nasir had indeed vanished in June 1997. His brother, Kadir, was still alive and was contacted immediately. The reunion was devastating. Now an older man, gray and weathered by time, Kadir looked down on his brother, who appeared unchanged, exactly as he had on the day he disappeared. For Nasir, time had stopped. For everyone else, it had been nearly 30 years of waiting and loss. DNA tests were ordered. Though his family didn't need them, they knew. His build, his clothes, even the small scar on his hand from a childhood accident, all of it matched perfectly.